Morning guys, I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School. And what we're going to do this morning is I've been working with this pole lathe a little bit and I'm getting a little bit more used to it. I'm starting to get some longer and finer shavings off of it. It has a lot to do with controlling the tool angle, the tool placement to the center point of the piece you're working on. There's lots of factors that probably become second nature over time like any other skill. But when you first start doing them, they're a little bit difficult and they give you problems. So I've turned down a few spindles now just to practice turning them down to shape. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put another spindle on the lathe, use a roughing gouge that I made yesterday because that was one tool that I needed, was a roughing gouge, so I made one yesterday. I found a larger framing chisel that I'm going to use that I've been using pretty much for a smoothing chisel. And that gives me two tools that I need. But what I thought I'd do this morning before I do that is I've got to cleave down a log. And cleaving is really the basis or the beginning of everything. Once you have felled and bucked a tree, you need to cleave the pieces that you've bucked into manageable resources to use in conjunction with the shave horse or with the pole lathe or a combination of the two to make other things. And I've really never seen a lot of videos that talk about proper ways or the proper methodology behind cleaving logs and getting the pieces that you need. So I thought we would take some tulip poplar this morning, take it out here to a stump and cleave that tulip poplar and talk a little bit about that, and then bring it over here, get it on the lathe and try to roughen it to another cylinder of sorts. So stay with me. All right, so we have a tulip poplar log here, another piece from the log that the tree that we harvested a couple weeks ago or last week, whenever it was. And anytime that we're going to cleave a piece of material like this, the first thing that we want to do is we want to cleave it straight across the middle of the pith line in one direction. And anytime that you're cleaving material, whether it be with an axe or a froe, it doesn't really matter, you want to try to cleave center line to whatever material you have left. That will give you an even split. If you try to take your first cleave here, what's going to happen is you're going to get a runoff here and you're not going to get an even split. So the first split that you do is going to be completely through the pith. We're going to split this down 4 times to give us 4 practice spindles. All right? Okay, so there's our first cleave. Now, you can see that we have split the pith in half basically, right here in the center of the log. Now we're going to do the same thing again with the next piece, and we're going to cleave it down center line here. Get the flattest end up to work with here. So now what we have here is we have a billet of sorts. And we want to split that down into something that we can use on the shave horse and eventually on the pole lathe. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to shave this down, and we could split this again here, but if we don't split it in the middle, we're not going to get an even split. So we really need to take it from this point straight to the shave horse. If we want to get a nice round billet out of this thing, get rid of this pith, get rid of this bark, and get a nice round billet to work with, we're going to need to take it as it is right now and start working with it on the shave horse. We could also just take an axe and shape it into a semi-round, and that's what we're going to do now. Okay, so again, we could take this straight to the shave horse as is and shave it into a round billet or a roundish billet ready for the pole lathe. Or we can just create that roundish shape of the billet by using our axe. Okay, so once we have something that's semi in the round, we can do one of two things. We can take this over to the shave horse now and get it smoothed out a little bit before we take it to the lathe. Or we can take it to the lathe as is and just rely on the roughing gouge to straighten out all the deformities that we've caused with our axe. Okay, so we have taken our billet here and we've put it on the shave horse and just shaved it to a fairly round consistency here, a little oval, not a big deal. Now we're going to put it on the lathe, and a couple things that we need to do. First of all, we need to punch center holes in this thing, and they don't have to be exact. You can kind of eyeball it, and I just use a regular punch awl for that, and just find what looks to be the center, and I just ream it in there a little bit, and that just gives me a place for my poppets to lock onto. And then you want to take some type of oil and oil that hole, or wax will work as well. Any type of oil will work, mineral oil, things like that. And all that's going to do is it's going to allow it to spin freely. Take a couple wraps with the engine rope here, just like that. And your poppets, being movable, gives you your course adjustment. And once you figure out where that's supposed to be, you can just lock that in place, and then you can adjust it down tight using the hand crank. Okay, so once we have everything locked in and ready to go, we can start to rough this piece in with our roughing gouge. And this roughing gouge is just one that I made from a file. I made it in the same fashion I made the other gouge. This one's just a little bit longer, got a little bit longer handle, and it's cupped all the way down the tool instead of just at the front. It's sharpened up and ready to go. Now, if you lay this tool on the tool rest until it's just kind of bumping the edge, and then you just kind of let it go in, and you push it in on the downstroke. Remember, right now all we're doing is getting rid of what we're doing first is we're getting rid of all the rough impurities. This is a roughing tool. And once we get that down to something that is cylindrical, even if it's still got a flat side on it, it's becoming more cylindrical because we've cut these higher points off. We can continue with the roughing gouge and go further down on that cylinder if we want to. Just like that. Or we can come in now with a chisel to smooth things down. Okay, so now that we have roughed an area out to something that's cylindrical in shape, we can now come in with another tool and we can begin to shape this down. And again, this is one of those things where you're going to cut it on the upstroke, but you've got to have some really good control on this tool. And it took me a while. Oop. See, I just cut that right there. That was where I lost control of the tool and made a cut. That's what you have to be very cognizant of. Now I can come back through there. If I make that a little bit smaller, it'll fix that. But if I were trying to make a piece that were dimensional for a chair leg or something like that, there wouldn't be any fixing it probably. But the angle of this tool to the workpiece is critical. And that will give you a much smoother finish. And then you can continue to go through there take more off. To get the diameter that you're looking for. You're going to know as soon as you miss your angle, you can feel it. There's no question about it. It feels completely different. Now, once you get a piece down to the round like that, flip it over. You can work the other side of the lathe, but in my mind, and from watching some other guys over in the UK that do this stuff full time, what they tend to do is they tend to take the piece out several times while they're working it from the lathe and flip it back and forth. And once I flip this piece over, I have to come right back in with this rough and gouge again and get this down to the semi-cylinder. And my goal right now learning this tool is really just to be able to create dimensional cylinders that are pretty much the same all the way across. Get my tool angle correct, make sure that I'm getting the proper type material shavings off of here, and from what I've seen with this rough and gouge, you're always going to get semi-chunky looking stuff because you're taking chunks across the grain like that. But once you get to the finer work of the chisel, and you can see some of those are fairly long, but when you first start out, a lot of it's going to be chunky because you're removing outside areas where you don't have a cylinder, and those high points are going to get knocked down first. Okay, so again, once I've got this to a cylinder, even if I've got a flat side, I can come in here with the chisel now and clean things up. There's definitely a trick and a feel to this, just like any other skill. It's not something you're going to develop, within a day. It's something that's going to take a little while to get used to that tool angle and where that tool has to hit the piece and not drop the bottom like I just did right there. Because as soon as you do that, you're going to take a chunk out of the material. So it's very important that you keep that tool kind of at an angle so that this tip is always up in the air a little bit, because if it catches down here, you're going to tear your material, especially in softer woods like this poplar. Now the other thing that I found with this is that being somewhat ambidextrous gives me a little bit of an advantage of being able to try to figure out which hand is going to work the best for me to hold the tool versus guide the tool. Because I feel like I could get a little bit better control going this way. And I can control things better coming across this direction and holding the tool down with my right hand and holding the back of the tool with my left. So I'm kind of guiding the tool with my right hand instead of my left. And I find that that's giving me a little bit better cut in general and a little bit more control over the tool to get those long, thin shavings. You can see this stuff coming off of here now is beautiful. That's what a pole lathe is supposed to look like. Oh, there we go. That's what I'm looking for right there. Beautiful. Okay, so let's go back to the cleaving for a minute. And we took 1/4 of this log, and that's what we use to turn that spindle. And that would give us 1 spindle. That spindle could be used for lots and lots of things depending on what we decide to do with the lathe. It could be a tool handle. It could be a furniture leg. It could be turned into some type of child's toy. There's lots and lots of things that you can do with wood in the round. You can also use a lathe like that to make bowls, which is my eventual goal as I'm learning how to use the pole lathe. But back to this cleaving for a minute. If we were going to cleave this for a spoon blank, remember what I said about it having to be halved every time to get correct splits. So if this log's not big enough around that we can lose the pith out of this log when we split it in half and still have enough left for a spoon blank, then the log's not big enough. In this case, what we can do is we could use this portion for our spoon blank, shave away this pith with the sawhorse or with the shave horse, and come back in and use this shaped up for a spoon blank. You can also take something like this and you can turn it on a lathe if the piece is big enough around so that you're actually making 2 spoons at one time or 2 spoon blanks by leaving it bulbous on one end to bring it down to a gentle taper for the handle, and then cleaving that piece of wood in half to give you 2 spoon blanks. So when you're cleaving wood, remember that the easiest way to get even amounts of wood is to cleave center line to the piece no matter what you're trying to do. Whether that be here or here or here or here. If you want an even split, it has to be done with the same amount of material on both sides. And I see that mistake being made countless times on the internet when people are cleaving or splitting wood. Okay folks, well I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School, and I appreciate you joining me here today for a quick video talking a little bit about proper cleaving methods to separate your wood or break down your material, and then how to prepare it, place it in the pole lathe, and some of what I'm learning along the way as far as tool angle and how to hold the tool and guide the tool to get those ribbon type shavings that you're looking for to give yourself a nice smooth spindle in the pole lathe. I got a long ways to go. I hope you'll stick around and learn with me. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our business, for our family, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends. I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks guys.